The moment you enter a room, people are already trying to read you. They scan your face, measure your tone, interpret your silences, and while they do this unconsciously based on fear, desire, or insecurity, Machiavelli did it with purpose, with surgical intent. He believed that power is not only about what you say or do, it's about how fast you can see through others. To manipulate someone, you must understand them. To protect yourself, you must predict them. To dominate them, you must read them before they realize they've been seen. Machiavelli knew that the surface is never the truth. Every smile could be a performance, every handshake a threat, every compliment a test. So he built tactics, not guesses. 14 psychological tactics designed to read anyone's character, motive, and hidden weakness instantly. The first tactic is to watch how they treat the invisible. Forget how they treat you. That's easy to fake. Instead, watch how they treat the one they think doesn't matter, like the waiter, the intern, or the person with no power. Machiavelli taught that power corrupts weak minds silently, and when someone believes they're safe to reveal their true nature, they'll always show you how they plan to treat you once your value drops. Respect toward the powerless is a more accurate signal of character than kindness toward equals, because there's no incentive to fake it. The second tactic is to silence them, then watch their mask slip. Insecurity thrives in sound. People fill silences not because they enjoy talking, but because they fear being seen without distraction. If you want to read someone quickly, speak less than them. Say nothing. Pause longer. Make your silence louder than their words. Within moments, they will overshare, try to impress, betray their fears, and reveal their motives. Silence is not absence, it's pressure. And under pressure, people reveal what they never intended to say. The third tactic is to offer them nothing and see what they do. This is one of Machiavelli's most brutal tactics. Give them no approval, no affection, no benefit, just your presence, detached and unreadable. Why? Because people will always treat you based on what they can extract. When you offer nothing, you see their default programming. Do they grow colder? They were only warm for gain. Do they try harder? They're insecure and crave approval. Do they stay neutral? They have emotional control and might be dangerous. The less you give, the more they reveal. The fourth tactic is to interrupt their control pattern. Some people speak in polished scripts. They've rehearsed charm, vulnerability, even honesty to manage how others see them. Machiavelli knew this kind of person is the hardest to read unless you break the script. How? Ask a question they don't expect. Interrupt their joke with silence. Respond to flattery with suspicion. Change the subject when they're building momentum. When their performance is interrupted, they stumble. And in that stumble, you see who they really are. The fifth tactic is to test their loyalty with small losses. Don't wait for a betrayal to learn someone's loyalty. Engineer the test. Say no to a small request. Deny them a favor they expected. Withhold attention for a brief time. Then watch. Do they remain respectful? Or do they begin to criticize, distance themselves, or gossip? Machiavellian minds understand loyalty isn't how people act when they win. It's how they react when they feel denied. The smallest no will reveal the largest truth. The sixth tactic is to measure their focus, not their words. People lie, but their focus doesn't. While they talk, observe what they pay attention to. Do their eyes dart toward powerful people? They crave status. Do they ignore low-status individuals? They respect only advantage. Do they check their phone while speaking with you? You're a placeholder, not a priority. Do they mimic your expressions? They're trying to gain favor. Machiavelli didn't listen to words. He tracked attention. Because attention is investment, and where they place it tells you everything they value and everything they don't. The seventh tactic is to mention a weakness you invented. Tell them something small and untrue about yourself. Something that sounds like a flaw, like, I tend to overthink things, or I used to be too trusting, or I'm not always good with confrontation. Then observe. If they exploit it, weaponizing your words later, mocking or using it against you, they're opportunistic. If they ignore it, they're either respectful or cautious. If they reveal a real weakness of their own, they want connection and feel safe. By creating a fictional vulnerability, you test their true reaction to weakness without risking anything real. The eighth tactic is to make them wait. There's no faster way to read someone's level of entitlement than to delay your response. Text back late. Be vague on scheduling. Take longer than expected to give them something. Entitled people panic, guilt trip, or get passive-aggressive. Patient people adapt and hold steady. Machiavelli didn't just look for loyalty, he looked for resilience. Because the impatient are the first to turn toxic when things no longer go their way, time exposes temperament. The ninth tactic is to see who they copy. Everyone copies someone, consciously or not. Their tone, their style, their mannerisms. Machiavelli believed that you can decode a person's ambition by studying their idol. If they mimic the powerful, they crave control. If they mimic the popular, they want attention. If they mimic the virtuous, they desire moral superiority. The person someone emulates is the person they secretly wish to be. And once you see who they mirror, you know what they're chasing. The 10th tactic is to trigger envy and watch the face flicker. Say something subtle that elevates you, like a recent win, an opportunity, or a compliment someone else gave you. Then watch their face closely. Is the smile too tight? Do they redirect the conversation instantly? Do they suddenly downplay your achievement? That's envy. And envy, according to Machiavelli, is the most dangerous emotional signal because it always precedes sabotage. Envy doesn't shout, it flickers. And once you see it, you never unsee it. The 11th tactic is to ask what they hate. Forget what they love. That's easy to fake. Ask instead, what kind of people do you dislike? Or, what kind of behavior do you hate in others? Because the answer is rarely about others, it's a mirror. The things people say they despise usually reflect their own suppressed traits. Those who claim to hate arrogance are often quietly arrogant. Those who claim to hate dishonesty are often skilled liars. Those who claim to hate weakness are secretly terrified of being seen as weak. In judgment, you find confession. The 12th tactic is to look at what makes them break eye contact. Direct eye contact is power, but what breaks it is truth. Mention certain topics like money, status, shame, past failures, or power dynamics and track their gaze. The eyes will twitch, shift, or drop the moment something hits too close. Machiavelli understood the eyes aren't just the window to the soul, they're the exit door of suppressed emotions. What makes the eyes flee reveals what the mind fears most. Tactics 13 and 14 are the most revealing of all, the ones Machiavelli himself used to protect thrones, navigate betrayals, and puppet the minds of those around him. When you use them, you don't just read someone. You control how they see you. The final two tactics aren't about observing others. They're about manipulating their perception of you to draw out their truth. Because while the weak try to read others by chasing answers, Machiavelli provoked answers to come to him. He built tension, not trust. He didn't ask, he triggered. These last tactics are designed to expose a person's true operating system, not by watching, but by setting the scene. The 13th tactic is to become the mirror they can't look away from. Most people walk through life wearing a mask. They perform, they charm, they pretend. But Machiavelli discovered that when you mirror a person's tone, posture, or language back at them, slowly, subtly, without overdoing it, you trigger something deep, unconscious self-recognition. They see themselves in you, and what they do next reveals exactly what they're hiding. For instance, mirror their casual tone. Do they get more intense as if trying to dominate you? Mirror their confidence. Do they pull back? Unsure how to handle it? Mirror their insecurity. Do they become superior, even mocking? By acting as their reflection, you create psychological friction. Most will not notice, but their instincts will respond, and that response tells you whether they're authentic, defensive, or manipulative. The more someone shifts when they see their own energy returned, the more they were performing in the first place. The 14th tactic is to disarm them with respect before you strike with observation. The average person expects judgment, so they come armed with excuses, defensive, filtered, guarded. But Machiavelli's genius was to begin with unexpected respect, compliment their intelligence, acknowledge something they've achieved, validate something they said, even if you don't fully believe it. Why? Because when you give someone psychological safety, they lower their guard. And then you ask the real question, the one they're not ready for, the one that bypasses their armor. For example, you might say, "You clearly think through things. What's the biggest fear behind your decisions?" Or, "You seem incredibly self-assured. When did you first learn how to fake that confidence?" Or, "You're clearly good at reading people. How do you know when someone's reading you?" Respect creates the opening, but it's the surgical question afterward that rips the mask clean off. People are more honest when they feel admired, and that's when the real data comes out. Now that you understand how to read people psychologically, the second layer begins, reading them strategically. Machiavelli didn't care about personality traits for their own sake. He studied people like terrain because every weakness, habit, and blind spot could be used, influenced, or guarded against. You can use their weakness as your leverage point. Once you see what someone's hiding, you gain more than understanding. You gain control, not to destroy, not even to manipulate, but to influence silently. If someone fears abandonment, distance becomes your tool. If they crave admiration, subtle disapproval makes them chase your respect. If they rely on control, unpredictability disarms them. And if they are dangerous, if they are hiding a dagger behind a smile, then you already know exactly where to strike or how to make them destroy themselves. This is where psychological reading becomes strategic warfare. Profile them into archetypes, but never say it out loud. Machiavelli didn't label people in conversation. He labeled them in his mind. He didn't say he's a narcissist or she's insecure. He observed, categorized, and acted accordingly without ever revealing the diagnosis. Why? Because labels kill power. People fight against them, but treatment without diagnosis, that slips in undetected. Some quick strategic archetypes include the masked pleaser, who craves approval and can be controlled with praise, but is dangerous when denied it. The silent climber, who appears loyal but watches power vacuums closely. Respect them, but don't trust proximity. The fragile genius, smart but unstable, whose brilliance can be useful but only if emotionally managed. The loud defender, who over-explains, overreacts, and justifies constantly, almost always hiding guilt or deep insecurity. You don't need to tell them what they are. You just need to know how to handle them without ever letting them know you're handling them. Observe how they handle the word no. There is no better litmus test of character than denial. Machiavelli believed a person's strength is not shown in victory, but in restriction. Say no to something they expect, like a favor, a compliment, an opportunity, or a piece of attention. Then step back. If they remain composed, the mind is disciplined. If they lash out subtly or emotionally, they're ruled by ego. If they shift tone entirely, dropping the mask, they were only playing a role. The rejection of their will shows their true emotional baseline. Detect who they want to impress. A key Machiavellian truth. People never speak just for expression. They speak to position themselves. Every word spoken in front of you is part of a strategy, even if unconscious. So ask, who are they performing for right now? You? They seek your validation. A group? They're claiming dominance. Someone not present? They're revealing a hidden target. Watch their eyes. Watch who they check for approval. Every joke, every opinion, every gesture is a tactical move towards someone's attention. When you know who they're trying to impress, you know who owns their loyalty, and it may not be you. Notice what they're proud of, and then look for the opposite. People often boast about one trait because they're hiding the opposite. Someone who says, "I'm brutally honest," often manipulates through selective truth. Someone who claims, "I'm low drama," is often a magnet for chaos. And someone who asserts, "I always put others first," is frequently secretly resentful or controlling. Machiavelli believed excessive emphasis on any one virtue was a signal, because real strength doesn't scream, it just is. When someone is loud about one value, investigate the shadow behind it. It's usually far more truthful. These aren't guesses. They're tools to sharpen your advantage. You're no longer seeing people as confusing variables. You're seeing them as code, patterns, programs, responses. But there's one more dimension, because once you can read them, you must choose how to play them. Do you give them what they want? Do you feed the mask? Do you test or destroy or elevate? Because with power comes responsibility, and with deep insight comes the risk of detachment or domination. But Machiavelli didn't flinch from that risk. He embraced it. He saw people not as obstacles or enemies, but as opportunities to move the game forward. And now that you can read anyone, the next move is learning how to use that read to win without ever being seen as the one pulling the strings. Once you've learned to read people with precision, your power doesn't come from knowing their secrets. It comes from knowing what to do with those secrets without them ever realizing they've been exposed. This is the moment Machiavellian intelligence shifts from perception to influence. You're no longer just watching, you're steering, and they're following your cues without even knowing it. Most people try to influence through persuasion, through logic, through sincerity. But Machiavelli had no interest in being understood. He was interested in being obeyed, subtly, silently, consistently. And the first rule of influencing someone who doesn't know they're being influenced is to make them believe they're acting on their own terms. First, mirror their desire, then redirect it. Once you've read what someone wants, status, attention, security, you don't confront it. You reflect it back to them. The ambitious, compliment their drive. The insecure, validate their effort. The dominant, acknowledge their control. This lowers their guard. They feel seen, understood. And once they're disarmed, you redirect. You link their desire to your objective. For example, if they want recognition, imply they'll earn more of it by aligning with your vision. If they want influence, show how following your plan gives them more visibility. You don't fight their desire, you hijack it. And once they follow your path, they think it was their idea. Second, use strategic vulnerability to make them talk. People love to talk about themselves, especially when they feel they're helping you. Machiavelli used this truth like a scalpel. He would reveal a small, controlled flaw, something believable but insignificant, like, "I never fully trust my instincts on first impressions," or "Sometimes I get too absorbed in my work," or "I'm not great at managing people like you are." Why? Because it creates an emotional imbalance. They now feel superior, which is an ego boost, helpful, which creates emotional investment, and trusted, which fosters false intimacy. And in that state, they open up. They begin revealing what they normally hide, not because you pressured them, but because they feel safe and above you. The mind that feels safe talks freely. The mind that feels superior talks truthfully. You've now unlocked both. Third, reveal half of a secret to create false equality. People trust most when they believe trust is being reciprocated. So Machiavelli would offer a partial truth or a controlled confession, enough to seem raw but never dangerous, like, "I had to learn the hard way not to rely on people I thought I could trust," or "I was underestimated a lot in the beginning until I stopped being nice." This creates a false mirror. They think you're just like them, and in their relief, they lower their defenses. Then they reveal a real vulnerability. This is the exchange Machiavelli mastered. You give them a puzzle piece. They give you the whole map. Fourth, let them define themselves and use their definition. One of the most potent manipulations is never to define someone. Let them define themselves. For instance, they might say, "I'm the type who values loyalty above all," or "I hate when people waste time," or "I don't let emotions control me." Now you have their self-identity, which means you know what they're trying to protect and how to frame requests, ideas, or objections so they align with their own script. If you ever need them to do something against their instincts, you just tie it to their stated values. For example, "You're the kind of person who values loyalty. I trust you'll handle this." Or, "I know you don't tolerate inefficiency. Here's the shortcut we need." You're not persuading. You're reaffirming their identity while steering it in your favor. And they won't resist because they believe they're being true to themselves. Fifth, create a reputation they must uphold. People fear loss more than they crave gain, so give them something to protect. Machiavelli would craft reputations for people before they'd earned them. You might say you're known for keeping your word, or people respect you because you don't get involved in petty politics, or you're always the one who keeps things balanced. Now they're on record, and the pressure is on. If they act against the identity you've publicly given them, they feel the risk of looking fake, inconsistent, or weak, so they stay in character. They uphold your definition because you've turned it into a social contract, and just like that, you've installed behavior without ever giving an order. Sixth, leak just enough information to guide perception. You don't always need to directly influence someone. Sometimes all you need to do is let them overhear the right thing. This could be a story about how you outmaneuvered a competitor, a joke that hints you're not easily fooled, or a casual remark that shows your standards are high. These leaks create anticipation and recalibration. People adjust their behavior around you based on the impression they think they discovered on their own, which is exactly what you wanted. Because when people feel they've figured you out, they stop questioning. And when they stop questioning, they become predictable. Seventh, let them win early so you can own the outcome later. One of Machiavelli's coldest moves was to give people early victories. Let them think their idea won, their leadership is needed, or their insight is unique. He fed their ego with small, harmless wins, while engineering the final result to benefit himself. Because he knew people protect what they think they built, defend what they think was their idea, and stay loyal when they feel important, even if they're being used. Let them write the first sentence. You control the conclusion. By now, you're no longer just reading people. You're building frameworks around their behavior. You're not reacting to them, you're predicting them. But the highest level of Machiavellian reading isn't about others. It's about what your ability to read others reveals about you. There is a shadow in every high-perception mind. Because when you see through everyone, you risk believing you're above them all. You begin to move without empathy. You begin to control for sport. And this is where the dangerous mind must make its final transformation. Not just into one who can read, influence, or outplay, but one who knows exactly when to stop the game and when to disappear while still winning. At the highest level of Machiavellian insight, the game no longer feels like a game. It becomes instinct. You no longer think, "How do I read this person?" You simply do. You walk into a room and the information flows about who's insecure, who's performing, who's quietly powerful, and who's watching you as closely as you're watching them.